Hello, and welcome to the second episode of me drawing my latest large-scale illustration called Shinku Drive, part of my Tokyo house drawings. This is going to be a street scene, as I was saying in the first episode, and on this one we're adding the second building. So as you've just seen, we've started off by doing a really quick sort of outline in pencil. And from that pencil outline, I'm starting to work in with the outline on probably a 0.5 pen. So starting off at the top, we're just having to really carefully go around them electricity cables. So what we're doing here is just adding the corrugated sheet metal, which is going to normally makes up the basis of lots of my drawings like this. I just love the texture of it, and I love how it adds quite a bit of depth to what in effect would be quite flat-fronted buildings. So this is quite a laborious task, because obviously you don't want to go through them cables, because I'm trying to keep them quite light on the top to give them a little bit of depth. So this is a little bit of a long job, but it's worth getting right. So in this episode, I'm going to go through a few little tips, and go into a little bit more detail of like the pen techniques that I use while I'm doing these drawings. So as I said in the previous episode, when I'm doing this sheet metal, I start off with probably about a 0.3 pen and do a series of lines, and then I go into it over the top with either a 0.5 or quite possibly a 0.1. And my apologies, a 0.05 or a 0.1. And that gives it that kind of shade. It sort of gives you the image that there's the sort of depth into the corrugated metal. Going back onto the windows, and what I like to do is, instead of just having a flat black, I like to have some cables and stuff. So this was a good opportunity with me having the air conditioning unit to be able to have some sort of cabling and tubing hanging down, just to break up that black window. So we're working along the bottom now. Once again, doing that sheet metal work across it, but this is going to have quite a lot of shading going across because of the blind on the previous building. It's filling in that window. Once again, more cabling going on. Now on this side, I want to have like a concrete look effect. So what I ended up doing there is just putting some dips in just to make it look like it's sort of texturized concrete. I'm doing a really similar technique here to get the shrubbery on the go. So once again, starting with a 0.03 pen and then building up to a 0.1. And it's the same with the vents. It's starting off with really thin pens and then working up just to give it that tone and texture. And then the other thing is trying to put a bit of identity into these air conditioning units. They are almost quite a cliche when it comes to this style of building, but if you look at any photographs or any pictures of these street scenes, they are absolutely awash with air conditioning units. So quite often it's good to give them a bit of identity and, make them a bit different, play around with them a little bit. I'm not an expert on air conditioning, so I'm probably getting bits and pieces completely wrong on them, but I do like to have a little bit of a play with how they look. Some are round, some are square. So here I'm putting that shade in from that blind from the previous building. So for this, I'm using a four-way crosshatch. What that means is basically going up, across, and then diagonally from both sides to give it that tone. It's really good. What I normally do is when I start these drawings is put some little arrows in so I know which way the sun's shining onto the picture. And they just give you a little bit of a reminder when you are putting the shading for all these things like the air conditioning units and for that sunshade of which way the sun's going to go. Because the amount of times on a drawing where I've just completely lost my mind for a second and I've gone and done the shading the other way. On this side here, I've gone again with that concrete sort of look, so really fine pointillism. And now I'm working on the ground floor. So this is going to be a wine bar. Pretty much doing quite a cliched street, and it's the sort of shops and stores and bars that you'd like to see on the street. So in the previous one we had a coffee shop, now we're doing a wine bar. So I'm putting a table outside, bit of shrubbery, sliding doors to make it sort of quite open onto the street, adding some lighting inside. And as you can see, I'm building up almost like a kind of outline here, and I'm going to start working into that a bit. So once again, concrete sides to the building. So dab in that. And then what I like to do is put a little bit of shading around it just so it looks like them concrete panels that you get. few menu boards going up. I think menu boards always break things up, and it gives the impression that there's a bit of life going on in the street. And then just filling in them gaps now. So going to about a 0.2 or 0.3 pen to do this. So once again, just working down through it and just being careful. Being careful to go around, make sure that them lighting, that you don't go over the lines. So basically this is just glorified colouring in. I'm not going to pretend it's anything different. I've basically made my outlines. I'm just going around it, trying not to mess up now. But just trying to get that little sort of wine bar bistro look. The Japanese text on it basically, I think, just means wine bar or something, so might even just mean wine. Trying to keep it quite simple on this one. So just adding some bottles outside. Once again, bit of concrete look. And then a little bit of shade over the front. It's nice when you do these drawings to just sort of see them come to life a little bit. I mean, these are pretty much flying by wire. I don't really have much of an impression in my head what it's going to look like. And I kind of just get started. I have a rough outline. And then as it goes on, it just sort of develops a bit of a life of its own. So hopefully you join me for part 3, where I'm going to be adding the third building. And I'll surprise you with what it's going to be. Thanks very much. Thank you for watching.